All right, welcome to the Dungeon of Doom NFL Combine Edition. Corey, welcome to the NFL Combine. Combine for Corey.
This is my first time here.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty busy week already. It is Thursday, February 27th, officially day 2 of the players speaking at the Combine. Players will hit the field tonight for the first time at Lucas Oil too, but we're going to focus on the Detroit Lions side of the equation. We spoke to Dan Campbell, we spoke to Brad Holmes, the local beat writers got a chance to sit down with Kelvin Sheppard and John Morton, which was just great. And that's what we're going to focus on here today. We'll get some thoughts on the Combine and stuff like that too, but this was kind of the first chance to really dissect the offseason with Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, meet the 2 new coordinators, got to hear from old friends Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson too. So we'll have that and more. But the Dungeon of Doom, we're happy to be here. We have found a quiet slice of the convention center here, but
this place is massive.
Oh, dude, I told you. But there might be some people walking by, so just an audio warning there. That'll make our producer Patrick happy that we've done that. But let's start with first impressions on John Morton and Kelvin Sheppard, just because we got about 20-25 minutes each with the new offensive and defensive coordinator. Let's start with the new guy. Or not the new guy, but the guy that's back in John Morton. We know who Kelvin Sheppard is, and we're still going to talk about that. But John Morton, man, really sold. I was impressed. I thought he really held his own. He's not like a stand-up comedian or live entertainer or anything like that. But he had a clear vision, and he wasn't mincing words. He's like, I understand that this is an aggressive team that goes for it on 4th down. I understand that they've been a top 5 offense 3 years in a row. I'd be crazy to change too much of that, but he is lauded as an idea man and creative and stuff like that. So
that was the most impressive thing for me was speaking with him, is just that, sometimes with, coaching changes from head coach, coordinators, position coaches, guys want to come in and bring hey, they were going to do things this way. They're going to do things this way. He's like, hey, from the gist of what I got from is it's no need to reinvent the wheel. Let me come in. Let me see what you guys have been doing well, and let's see what we can possibly tweak to make it better. I mean, even when it came down to a question that we know a lot of fans will know about, what's going to happen to the trick plays? He said, hey, if Dan wants trick plays, he gets trick plays. He sounds like a guy that does not have an ego in coming and joining this team. He just wants to be able to do what he can and put his stamp on it to make this offense as efficient as possible. The one thing that really stuck out to me was I like what he talked about as far as protecting the ball and limiting turnovers. I mean, Jared Goff does not really have crazy turnovers, but there are some games that he'll have that are like an aberration where it's like, hey, he doesn't turn the ball over, but if he has a game, if he turns it over, most of those are going to come in one game, not throughout the entire season.
I mean, that's what was it, 60+% of his turnovers came in 2 games last year. So that's well said. And I think the thing that fans will like to hear is that so much of what worked between Ben Johnson and Jared Goff was Ben inviting Jared to the table.
Yeah.
Not just for show, to have a real voice. What do you like to do? What do you like about this? How do you like to call it? And I was really impressed with John Morton talking about when Drew Brees came from the Chargers to the Saints, and they had a lot of the same philosophies, a lot of the same plays. And he's like, Drew liked to call it this, terminology-wise. So I said, why would I not make life easier for him? Why would I not connect with him?
Yes.
Why would I not meet him? He's running my play. If he wants to call it that, cool, let's call it that. And I think that's really important because that's when you saw Jared take off, is when he felt like he had say, when he felt like he had ownership in the offense. And when Morton was here in 2022, he said Dan and Ben came up to him because he got hired after the Combine, so it was a little late in the offseason, and they came up to him and they were like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I'll go with the quarterback.
Yeah, because he want to learn more about the position and just the intricacies and the way things are done mechanic-wise. And
I mean,
what can you say? It was really impressive to hear from him. And again, when you're taking over, say, a team under Matt Patricia and that regime, okay, you got to turn things around.
Yeah.
This team just went 15-2 and set numerous offensive records throughout the entire year, especially Jared Goff. So it's like, and the guy finished, regardless of what you want to say, he finishes an MVP finalist. So
Yeah, top five. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, let's maybe just some things we can kind of tweak and work on to get it even more better. You get it
Yeah.
even better if it's possible.
Yeah, and Morton's from here. Grew up going to games at the Pontiac Silverdome. Like
Billy Sims guy.
Billy Sims guy. That's right. That's right. So like this means something to him. His family's Lions fans. He grew up around this team. I mean, he went to high school by the Silverdome. Like this means something to him. And also, he wants to be an offensive play caller. Like he's like when I first landed with John Gruden, he said, "What are your goals?" He said, "I want to be a play caller." And everything since then has been preparing him for this moment. Yes, he talked about his 2017 stints with the Jets, but that was a situation. I loved how he described it. He's like, I didn't know the coaches. I didn't have say on the players. And it's like when you're cooking a recipe that you love to cook and you're not allowed to use your favorite ingredients. I was just really impressed with that. And just, I think he really does speak the same language as Dan. You know, you work with Sean Payton, you've worked with Dan before. And let's cut to John Morton. Let's clip in a little of his interview here talking about Jared Goff, because I think that is why he's here, why this thing's going to work. And I think it's the thing that should have fans the most excited.
When I came in, Ben and Dan kind of asked me where I wanted to go. I said I like to go with the quarterback. And so, you know, that 2 or 3 years I was with Vegas, I got to learn a lot about the quarterback. And I wanted to stay in there because I thought to take me to the next level as offense coordinator and play caller, I needed to know that position inside and out. I know the plays, but it was the techniques and everything that go with it. So I did that. So I did that with Jared, with him, Brunell. And it was, you know, whether it was drills, certain drills to work with to help the quarterback. I thought that was big, and just game planning, you know, how to teach the quarterback as far as game plan, third down, red zone, this and that, what to look for, things like that. So I was a big part of that.
So, yeah, there you go. That's John Morton on Jared Goff. I think that's going to make a lot of people happy to hear that, because that's what Dan set out when he needed an offensive coordinator, was like, Jared's going to have say. Like, it's not going to be the final say, but he's going to have say. So there you go.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just, how do I want to say this? Yes, make your team captain. Make the guy that has to make this thing go comfortable. It's a sound logic that a lot of teams do not do, and it's just really simple. So.
Exactly. And yeah, let's transition to Kelvin Shepherd. We know Shep. We know what he's about. I think the most interesting thing from Dan, from Shep, is that Dan's like, this defense not going to change crazy. Like, we're still going to play man coverage. We might change the way we play man coverage. And I liked, and maybe you got a different perspective, but I liked, he's like, with AG, it started at the back end and went forward. With Shep, he's got an idea, or a great idea, and great people in place to help him figure out the secondary and the back end. But he's like, he's going to bring mentality from the front seven back. So I'm very curious to see those tweaks there. What did you think about Shep?
2 things that stood out from Shep that really impressed me. One is just that he said that he's not really tied to a scheme, and just really took us down memory lane of how they've switched up the scheme over the years under Aaron Glenn based on the personnel. So that was really impressive that he's just not coming in saying, hey, this is how we're going to do things. But the one thing I really did love was the answer when it was talks about his age, about him being too young of a coordinator. He's like, okay, when you're talking about experience, are you talking about, you know, me being around the game? I mean, I've been around the game since I was 5.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about coaching experience, okay, it's great. I'm young. I can do this for another 30 years.
Yeah.
I just love how he nipped that in the bud. But again, when you have a guy like him who not just has the command and the respect of the unit that he was coaching the past 4 years, but the respect of the locker room. When you got a guy, when you don't even have just the defensive guys reaching out, he said the offensive guys reached out. Didn't have Jared Goff's cell number, but Jared Goff reached out to him. St. Brown, just having that respect, that goes a long way, and that also shows you that the culture that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, I almost said Brad Campbell again, I had to stop myself, but the culture that those two and others have instilled in this Lions locker room, it's working.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I loved what Dan said, because Aaron Glenn gets a lot of the deserved credit for mentoring Kelvin Shepherd, but Dan Campbell laid out 2 years ago, he's like, oh, this guy's going to be ready sooner than later. and they kept finding ways to put more on his plate this year, speaking in front of the team more, helping game plan and stuff more. And that was intentional. I mean, Aaron Glenn's name has been in the head coaching market for 4 years now. So,
and that also, again, just that right there shows you another layer of how smart Dan Campbell is.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we had a brief interruption there in the middle of our recording. We're trying to be efficient here at the NFL Combine. And, we just got interrupted by a forced security restart. Never had it happen like that from the Overlord, so thanks for keeping us safe. But we're talking about Kelvin Sheppard, and I was just really impressed with him. I've always been really impressed with Kelvin Sheppard. And just to hear Dan Campbell and then Kelvin Sheppard talk about the mentors in his life, from the Chuck Paganos and so on and so forth, but just like that they wanted to put more on his plate to prepare him for this.
Yeah.
Not a lot of places think about the future in that regard, especially with a 34-year-old linebackers coach at the time who was playing for the Lions 6 or 7 years ago. Like, that is some forward thinking. And that is just another reason to trust Dan Campbell in what he called phase 2 of filling out his coaching staff. But as you noted about Kelvin Sheppard's age in the profession compared to his age, let's play that quote back too, because like you, I was most impressed by kind of how he handled that, how he explained himself. Yes, I'm 37. Yes, this is a rare opportunity, but man, I'm not new to football. So here's that.
And, people kind of, I keep hearing that still so young. And I say, what does that mean? Are we talking my age, or are we talking experience in the profession that I work in? Because I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. So, if you say my age, I think that's a blessing, because I could do this another 30 years. But if you're talking about just my experience in the field of football, I think I'm just as knowledgeable as anybody that's 60 or 70 years old. To me, it's all about time on task, where you were able to get that time on task. For me, I was very fortunate to be around a lot of very good coaches throughout my playing career. And now, obviously, throughout my coaching career, multiple head coaches, multiple coordinators, guys who were an open book for me and kind of poured into me. So I was able to grasp all those things. So I would say, when I get that young thing, and I don't take it as a slight or anything, but I just would ask people, what does that mean?
So yeah, final takeaways from Kelvin Sheppard. What you got?
I think that he's going to have this defense rolling. I'm curious to see who they take in this draft, what type of personnel we start to kind of see shape out during training camp and whatnot. But I really do think that of the hires that they had to make, they went outside. Technically, they went outside with John Morton, so bringing them back.
Yeah.
But with the defensive coordinator hire, I really, even though they interviewed some people, I think that Kelvin Sheppard had to be the guy to kind of at least keep this continuity of Dan Campbell's message and vision for this culture and for that locker room.
Yeah, and it's a good, man. Casey Rogers is no joke as a defensive line coach. He got a lot of love too. That's a veteran coach. That's a guy that's been a DC. And here we go. I got something I can ask you, because I got asked by a couple beat writers from around the country that I know yesterday, like, hey, who's the potential cap casualties? And I'm like, that's tough. I was like, I've seen DJ Reader's name get thrown out there a lot. I don't think so. What is it, 13 or 14 million? Why would they make the interior defensive line weaker? Like, DJ Reader came into training camp last year after 2 torn quads in 3 years, man. And once he got going, he was going, man.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Reader's back, right? That's how I feel.
I could see it, just based off of the deal, but I don't think it would be a bright move. Yeah. I think that, especially with Aleem McNeil and that injury, and who's to say when he'll be ready, if he'll be ready by the time the season starts?
Exactly.
I think that, if you're just really looking to save some money, okay, yeah, you can see DJ Reader, but I don't think it would make sense. But that is a really good question. I have to really put some more thought into, because I'm like, who would you get rid of?
Yeah, that just hit me out of nowhere, and I'm just kind of like, I don't think there's an obvious cap casualty. Like another buddy of mine was like, what about Anzalone? I'm like, hell no.
Oh, no. Like, just when you think about this team and you're going through the positions, it's like, okay, I can see them moving on from some guys. the cap casualty is just like, well,
Yeah.
the guys you have on defense, you really need them.
No, I know. That's why I was like I understand like why people have named Reeder as someone to
Yeah.
watch because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of injuries in recent years, but like get a full year out of him. Like,
Yeah.
and what I mean by a full year is like an off season,
Yeah.
healthy, a training camp with the team. I think like I just keep going back to like, you're really going to make that interior defensive line thinner? Mekhi Wingo and Aleem McNeil both suffered December ACL injuries.
Yeah, that's why I just said I don't see how you could. I don't see how you could get rid of him just even based on that. I'm not. If Aleem was healthy, okay,
Yeah.
maybe, but
Yeah.
with Aleem, with not sure if this guy's gonna be ready by this start of the season. I don't think you can get rid of him. I think it might be some smaller
Yeah.
hits along the way that might add up to freeing up some room somewhere. They gotta maybe find those guys,
Right.
replacements through the draft, small free agent signings. But I don't think there is just one guy that you can be like, hey, he's the cap casualty, because a
No.
lot of those starters you do need.
Exactly. And maybe there's a restructure here or there. I mean, I don't think, yeah. Now, the interesting part of that is if they want Levi Onwuzurike and they have to compete with multiple other teams. And if you're talking about a guy that you've literally waited 4 years for and he finally shows out, and if you want to keep him around, like I'm sure they do, like, okay, you could talk me into that. But I think a restructure is a lot more than just a flat out, sorry, thanks for 1 year. But like, and another guy that, like, yeah, the Anzalone thing, I was shocked to even get asked that. I'm like, Kelvin Shepard? That is his on-field assistant coach. Just like
I said, I can see Reeder. I don't even know how you even consider Anzalone.
I know.
Did anybody see what happened when he was out?
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I got loud.
No. That's a perfect situation to get loud for. I know when my buddy asked that, and he's just like, "Oh, I just saw his name on a couple lists," and I'm like, "What? Where's this list?" And stop reading that publication. But and just one final thought on what Kelvin Shepard's rise as defensive coordinator means for the roster. I fully expect Derek Barnes back.
Oh yeah, you know what? I could see. I would expect Derek Barnes to be back them to try to work something out. Having said that, I could also see the lines going in a different direction, or possibly Derek Barnes following AG, depending on on what the Jets cap situation looks like. I honestly have not looked too deep into their cap situation, but I mean,
nor should you.
Yeah. But yeah, I could see a scenario because again, how is Derek Barnes going to be when he comes back?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a guy that you did invest some years into, but is it possible that we could get we can upgrade it in the draft, or possibly bring in a guy that could maybe be a little bit better in coverage? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of floating possibilities, but I do think that is he's one of the guys
that's like Shep's project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those guys that I could see coming back, but I could also see leaving the door. But again, you talked about Levi, a guy that they put investment time in. Derek Barnes has gotten better each year.
Oh God, yeah.
And it's just it was really unfortunate for the Lions that he suffered that injury, because who knows, you're talking about a different scenario on how the Lions season ended.
Yeah, no, it's very true. But like, I was just shocked to hear. I was like, no, let me just. I did not see where that showed up at, but let me just say here, if that happens, I'll eat something terrible. If
Anzalone was a cap casualty, that would be more so like, okay, who did he make mad?
No, yeah, exactly. No, that guy is so important to the on-field, off-field operations, and I just think for a first-year defensive coordinator, there's like no one more important to this operation and bleeding it over to the next phase. But yeah, that's there's a lot to think about. Like, I really do think Shep has a real voice at the table. Like, he was not just a let's keep this guy around. No, like there were some legit options to be. I mean, shoot, you could have talked about Casey Rogers as a defensive coordinator. You could talk about keeping Terrell Williams around as a defensive coordinator. But no, they saw the vision.
And I believe they, according to reports, they interviewed Larry Foote.
Which is, exactly, man. I mean, the 37-year-old getting this job, I mean, this was an attractive job. Like, this was an attractive job. That offensive coordinator, this was an attractive job. They didn't go for the big name. They didn't go for the name that was going to impress all the national writers or anything like that. They went for the best fit for the culture, for the team, for the scheme, and for the players involved, because it's all about the players, and it always has been.
And you know what's interesting? The national name, the one that everybody like, oh, we got this guy. Sometimes that does not always work out.
Right.
Prime example, and this is not throwing anybody in the bus or being disrespectful, but when Dan Campbell formed his inaugural staff, people raved about the hire of Anthony Lynn.
Yeah, I was one of them.
And on paper, it was like, okay, wow, experienced guy, but the chemistry did not work out the way they planned on it. And what did they do? They promoted Ben Johnson.
Exactly. And we know how that works.
We know how it worked out.
But yeah, let's move into Dan Campbell. Dan was at his most Danish, getting asked questions like, "Hey, what do you get most about the NFL Combine?" And he points at this guy and says, "Talking to you." But we'll focus on Dan. And the one thing I want to take from Dan is talking about phase 2 of the coaching staff. Dude, the love of Tashard Choice as running backs coach is unprecedented. Like, both Dan, Brad said we didn't think we were going to be able to pull that one off. Like, Dan called him the most coveted college running backs coach to come to the NFL that he can ever remember.
I have a friend at Texas that went to Texas.
Yep.
She's a diehard Longhorns fan. When that news came out, she was not pleased. That's how coveted that guy is. It sent shockwaves through it. And I mean, again, I know you're probably going to get more into it, but this is a guy that's worked extensively with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep.
He's a huge reason Jahmyr Gibbs is the way he is.
Yep.
So being able to bring that guy and reunite him with his former coach, and just being able to have that input, and then to me, one of the biggest things about it was you bring in a coveted running back coach and you don't lose a guy like Scotty Montgomery.
Exactly.
You slide him over to wide receivers coach, something that he's done before, and that's also his stock and trade. So it's a win-win.
I know there were a lot of questions like, oh, what's going to happen to Scotty Montgomery? Why is he wide receivers coach? He has coached wide receivers and played wide receivers at the pro and college level.
Yes.
Like, this is not just a one-trick pony. I mean, he's been a head coach. He's been a play caller. He's been a running backs coach. He's been an assistant head coach. And just we'll play the clip of Dan talking about Scotty and Tashard here in a second. But the one thing that you led into perfectly is, like, when I was doing that feature on Gibbs ahead of the divisional round, I talked to his high school running backs coach from Dalton, Georgia, and he's just like, these schools are coming in here. No SEC attention. They wanted him to switch to DB. They thought he was too small. They thought he was too this. And he's like, then Tashard Choice shows up, and he's just like, he saw the light, and he like got him to Georgia Tech. And then I talked to Brent Key, Georgia Tech's head coach, and the same thing came up. He's like, Tashard came to me, and he's just like, you have to see this kid. And he's like, oh, I've heard of him. A little undersized, right? A lot of people thinking DB. And he's like, no, running back. So there you go. I mean, you're talking about someone who was instrumental in recruiting him, keeping him at running back, developing before he transferred to Alabama, and now he gets to coach him at the next level, 1 year removed from leading the freaking NFL with 20 touchdowns in year 2.
I mean, we know that Scotty has a close relationship with Jahmyr and David Montgomery, but just it's got to be somewhat of a full circle move for Jahmyr to have the guy that believed in him to now coach him again at this level. That's just got to be something even extra special.
Just a level of trust there too. And Dan is super confident it's going to be great for David Montgomery too. But and I'll just say this, Scotty ain't going nowhere. Still assistant head coach.
Yeah.
Still one of the top voices on that staff, on the offensive staff. So he's going to be coaching receivers, but it's not, his title as assistant head coach is not empty. It's not just there to keep him here. I mean, that's Dan has said it before. Scotty Montgomery's ready to be a head coach. There's a lot of trust in him. So the shuffling of the staff, the names that they've added, 3 NFL quarterbacks are now on the staff too. I like Dan's response to, you going to pass, Maury, because you have 3 NFL quarterbacks? He's like, what? No. So that's fun. But yeah, let's play Dan talking about the new staff and just phase 2 of building that out. And we'll get out of here with a little Brad Holmes talk.
I told Ben and AG the same thing when they were leaving, and it was the same thing I was told. The most important thing you'll do as a head coach is hiring your staff. And so I had to do that already one time, and then over the course of the last 4 years, other coaches that have come and gone. And so this was the biggest, this is kind of the phase 2, man. This is to reload the coordinators and different position coaches. So I wanted to take my time and do it right. And so, you know, I had a lot of interviews, and really sat them down, got to know them, kind of figure them out a little bit, what they take. The football is there, but it's really about the mesh, the chemistry. I'm big on that. So that was a big part of it, and I think we got it right.
So I think there are two things to focus on when we move to Brad Holmes.
Okay.
Aiden Hutchinson, planning stages of an extension, and just him not sounding confident about a Myles Garrett trade. He didn't say Myles Garrett by name, by the way.
Yeah.
But he was asked about,
alluding.
Can you acquire a superstar pass rusher? Can you afford to? Probably not. Brad does not speak in yeses and nos. So and I know he plays things close to the vest, but when he does speak in yeses and nos, it matters.
He gave you the lay of the land right there, and I do understand it right now because, again, all things that we're hearing, and let's just say Myles Garrett for right now, all things we're hearing about Myles Garrett is just that Brown's like, hey, we're not moving on from it. We know what we see the reports out there. We know he has the request, but we don't envision a future where he is not a Cleveland Brown.
Yeah.
And I know some people may think like, oh, well, he has to say that. He has to say that. They can very well mean it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing with the Browns and the monumental grave they've dug themselves.
Yeah.
You're not going to get out of that. I mean, I know, like, if you get a couple first-round picks, that's great, but, like, Myles Garrett's a generational talent.
And you know what?
In the prime.
And Brad alluded on to it. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase what he said.
Yeah.
Dominant star pass rushers do not grow on trees.
Yeah,
so when a team has one,
yeah,
they're not trying to give them up.
No, exactly. I mean, he's just like talking about the Zadarius Smith trade. He's like, that was hard. And that was like, and Zadarius Smith, household name, veteran guy, he called that the toughest negotiations of his career.
I mean, even Zadarius said it himself when he first arrived. He said when everything kind of went down with Aiden going down, he said Andrew Berry came to him and said, hey, this is what's going on. They're asking about you. He said the Lions reached out immediately. You still see that took a couple of weeks for that to actually happen.
Yeah.
So it's just, if they're able to get a star pass rusher, great. But again, I don't think that if they don't land a Myles Garrett, if they don't land a Max Crosby, I don't think it's for a lack of trying. It's for just teams like, hey, these guys are rare, and why give it up why give up it to get picks and more picks to kind of still look for that type of guy?
Yeah, exactly. And I saw a report yesterday evening, it's Thursday, February 27th, from ESPN's Kimberly Martin saying that the Lions were one of those teams that reached out about Garrett ahead of this year's trade deadline. So I think they have an idea already of like click.
And you can reach out all you want.
Yeah.
You can give the best trade package all you want. The other team still has to say yes. It's not Madden where you're dealing with an AI system and like, okay, this trade works. Boom. Myles Garrett is a Lion. Max Crosby is a Lion. No, this is real life. You can make the call. You can give, hey, this first, this third, this fourth. Other team still has to bite.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're asking me, like, if they made that move, I would give it an A++++ infinity. Like, I would not, but like another aspect of that conversation is that the upcoming extension from Hutchinson is not going to be small. I was looking at those contracts yesterday, and it's like Bosa leads the way at 170 with 80+ guaranteed. And it's just like, Hutch has got a good argument, man. Not to like surpass that, but maybe to match that. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I've heard any numbers or anything, but like, you look at his age, you look at his production, you look at the fact that he led this team in sacks and was in the top 3 pressures with 5 games played. He's a freak. He's a superstar. Everybody is fully confident that he's going to be the guy who he returns to. And just after covering Hutch for 3 years, like, he's a football He's a football RoboCop. Like,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
just
That's a
like,
great way.
he is designed to work his butt off and be a crazy person and get back on that field just because he does have just a pretty unbelievable drive
Yeah.
that I've not ever really kind of been in front of like that in my time on this beat. It's unbelievable, but it ain't gonna be cheap. Like, it ain't gonna be less than 150. That's the absolute floor. And it's like, when you talk about Myles Garrett, like, you got to worry about Kirby Joseph extension. You got Jameson Williams to consider. You got Sam Laporta to consider before too long. I mean, there's just like, there's so much you have to fill out. And the thing is, they already have a superstar pass rusher.
Yeah.
Brad Holmes is just not going to give away. He's not Les Snead. And that's not a negative comment. He's just not going to give away first round picks.
And I don't think and I will say this, I do think that they need to add another pass rusher to pair along with Aiden Hutchinson, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a generational talent.
Yeah.
You have a guy that's already a generational talent, an A-plus guy in Aiden Hutchinson. So if you get an A-plus guy already, and then you add somebody that's a B-plus or a solid B, that's still good.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I really do think the most likely chain of events is go draft an edge rusher, first or second round, bank on Josh Paschal being better, try and get something done with Levi, maybe restructure Reader's deal, as we've talked about, to be able to get Levi back. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 or 3 picks in this draft by the Lions, talking top 5 rounds, are defensive line guys. That's what we'll end on. This defensive line class is crazy good. Like, I'm looking at guys like Joshua Farmer from Florida State, and people are talking like 3rd and 2nd round. I'm like, holy crap. And then I look at Pro Football Focus. They have 20 guys on the defensive line or the edge ranked inside their top 50 prospects. And as I just said, Brad Holmes tries not to speak yes or no's in the media. He said, yes, this defensive line class is better than I've seen in this position with the Lions. Him and Ray Agnew, who played a decade plus in the NFL as a defensive lineman. Brad Holmes, who played defensive line in college. That is their like specific position of expertise, in my opinion. And that's real, man. I mean, this defensive line class, we talked about it yesterday. Like, holy crap.
I mean, it's a lot of guys in there. We've both done mock drafts. We've both reviewed positions of guys coming into the combine. If there is a lot of young talent where the Lions can go get another interior D-line, get another edge rusher that they can continue to develop or be a day one contributor.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely. The
one thing that I will say is that I'm hoping that the Lions don't draft a guy with hope the right word, with vitals, whatever, that is not going to be ready day one. I think that is something that has set them back a couple of times before. I want them to draft a guy that has a somewhat clean bill of health coming into this season, because the window, I'm not going to be one of those guys who say, the window is closing. No, but they're in the window.
Yes.
And they need somebody that can, week one, they're on the field.
No, that's a great point, because, I mean, Paschal, injury history and obviously medical history. Can't hold that against him. I mean, he's a warrior who has continued to work his way back. Anze Rique, injury issues. Like, nope, you're 100% right, because there's less spots for rookies. There's less spots for projects. And that's the one thing I wrote in like my thoughts ahead of the offseason post, whenever that was. I lose track of the days in the offseason, but it was like, it's time to focus. You've taken your developmental project swings. Continue to do that, but do that in the later rounds. Not 3rd round picks, man. 3rd round picks.
That's still the top 90-something guys.
Get a player, and that's no offense. Like, maybe Broderick Martin puts it together. Maybe Manu puts it together. Maybe Vaki puts it together. But we're talking about projects. We're talking about a safety turned running back. We're talking about a guy that, like, the Athletics' Dane Brugler, who I hold in high regard when it comes to the draft, had him look like a priority free agent grade. Like, get a guy that can make this roster, like, and not just make the roster and have a spot, but like play snaps. Like Hendon Hooker, like 3rd round pick that you moved up for. Like
you need
guys.
Right now you need key rotational pieces specifically on that defense.
Yeah.
And probably draft a potential third round receiver. You can develop a.
Yeah.
I would say
I
would say that would be the develop pick, maybe like in the
bring Tim Patrick back and do that. Yeah,
do that. But on defense, no. If you're going defense, these guys have to key contributors right now.
I do agree with that, and I know Brad Holmes is someone who does not box himself into positional talk or not taking risks and stuff like that. But I do think that there needs to be a more honed in focus on like this guy can play, and we think he can play now.
Yeah,
like and I think there's a lot of guys like that on the defensive line. We got 20 minutes to get downstairs for defensive backs, so we're going to get out of here. We will play you a clip of Brad Holmes talking about the Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson situation on the way out. But Corey, he's killing it at his first combine.
Woo, it's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. Yeah, you're 6 for me. Yeah, dude, this building's so big. But we are your Dungeon of Doom podcast. Thank you for listening. Remember, hit up that new email address. We will look into questions. This kind of week spoke for itself. We had talking points, but Dungeon of Doom at mlive.com. I'm Ben Raven. He's Corey Woods. We are your Dungeon of Doom podcast, and we'll get you that clip of Brad Holmes on the way out right here.
Just because you lose a star pass rusher, there's not but so many in the league anyways. And so just because we lost a star pass rusher due to injury, that doesn't mean that other teams are going to say, hey, we have a star pass rusher. I know you lost one, but we have one. Would you like to have this one? No, that's a star pass rusher for that team, and they're trying to win games. But yeah, it's those guys are hard to acquire, and it's hard to keep them financially. Again, we have one that's due for an extension, and we've already kind of gotten to the planning stages about him already. And so when you talk about adding another one, it's like, well, all right, can you financially add another one because you want to add the other one on top of everything else that you have? It makes it tough.
Can you? Thank you, guys. Can you?
Probably not.